But right now, I want to continue the conversation here as we're talking about this isn't necessarily an illegal use of force when we think about federal agents being deployed here. But there are question marks. As Mom always said, just because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should. And for more on that conversation, I want to bring on Walter Olson, Cato Institute Senior Fellow. Walter, it's good to chat with you again. When we're talking about this, I guess, we're talking about something well within their rights to deploy and authorize federal employees to kind of come in here and reestablish law and order. But what are the questions right now we as Americans should be thinking about what's going on here?
Well, thanks, Zach. We've got two sets of questions. One is about Portland and one is about these other cities, because they're really a different set of questions. With Portland, you've got the feds sending agents there because the federal courthouse has been under attack. And that is kind of a traditional reason for the federal government to use law enforcement. Where the questions come up is, are they staying by the courthouse or are they going out blocks away and arresting people that they think might have been involved? A lot of controversy over the street policing that these federal agents have gotten into. Now with Chicago and Albuquerque, you've got other questions. They're not apparently going to get into street policing. They are, unlike Portland, they have agreed with the mayors of those cities and they've sweetened it up because they are sending millions of dollars to Chicago and Albuquerque. Building on what Kristen was saying, they're going to be sending them millions of dollars to hire local police and to reimburse their costs. And in those cities, they're after street crime of a different sort. They're after the drive-by shootings, the gangland stuff, rather than the demonstrations, so far as what they've said so far.
Yeah, and there is, take it with a grain of salt, depending on what we see play out here. But when you describe the scenes that we got out of Portland, it's pretty surprising to see there, even the mayor of Portland, Ted Wheeler, denouncing the presence and use of force coming from those federal officers as, quote, an egregious overreaction. He was tear gas in that demonstration and in his own city as mayor. So when we think about the force being used here, it's something that we've discussed on the show together here before, but what are the fears that might come with a police force in many instances like this, not really wearing badges, anonymous badges, and what we're talking about here and holding these officers accountable with the use of force, something that's already a problem for badged officers, local officers. Now, how does that become even a bigger problem when they're federal agents? No one knows.
It's been a big problem in Portland because they have been dressed in paramilitary style. If a couple of these agents are coming at you on the street trying to take you into a van, how do you know that they are legitimate federal agents? It can be very hard to spot the little agency badges that are not badges, but patches that they've worn, and they are not wearing name badges the way police so often do. So lots of dangers of people wondering whether they're allowed to use self-defense when someone who isn't well identified is trying to arrest them. A lot of questions that we don't want to see go nationwide. And it was interesting that the U.S. Attorney for Kansas City went out of his way yesterday to say that to the extent that the feds are going to be doing any arrests in those other cities, they're going to be well identified, they're going to be wearing more normal clothes, all the things that we have learned to expect of federal agencies that are working within the law.
Yeah, and lastly, when we're talking about working within the law, there are constitutional problems here when we think about what could be going on. As you've noted before, picking someone up, throwing them in a van, there are rights that go along with this when we think about it. So what might be some of these things that we should keep a note of? Because even the conservative argument here would say, look, there's a reason why Congress didn't get on board with the idea of a federal police force back after 9/11. What are the concerns there?
There was a lot of talk after 9/11, should there be a federal domestic security agency? And Congress said no, because first, we've never had that, and the Constitution reserves that kind of policing to the states and the cities, not the federal government. But also we worried about countries that have that kind of thing. What could happen if they went wrong? What could happen if it were turned into a political tool? So the debate over Portland is important that way, not just because of the things that have happened in the past few nights, but to draw the line about where it might go in the future.
All right, there you go. The latest. We'll be watching all of this as, again, the troops being sent out there to more and more cities. We'll track it. But Walter Olson, Cato Institute Senior Fellow, appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.